Podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright. Still Friday Winter Palooza. Whatever we got going on here in North Carolina.
SNOWPOCALYSE.
Thank you.
Version 2.0. So Brian, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
February 12th, 2014. Do you remember where you were?
I was in North Carolina, but I do not specifically know. February 14th, maybe a Valentine's Day. Could have been a good one. Could have been a bad one.
So roughly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
This is when one of the most infamous pictures of all time, probably in Raleigh, North Carolina, was taken. It was when we had a few inches of snow. Glenwood Avenue, somehow a car just caught on fire. There's cars crashing to the side of the road. There's a woman calling for help on her cell phone.
I think the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man made an appearance too.
And so then from that, several GIFs and memes were created off of this, where it was the Marshmallow Man. I think some Star Wars things were in the mix as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's what people are expecting now. When people in Raleigh, North Carolina say it's going to snow. And you get a lot of these people who are moved from New York and Ohio and Pennsylvania, and they make fun of people from the South when it snows. But
rightfully so, I would say. What you end up with here, though, is a lot more ice. If we get snow, I mean, I think even, people that are decent drivers can figure out how to adapt. When you get ice, there's not a whole lot you can do. And then
I don't care where you're from. You can't drive on ice.
No, it doesn't work. I've seen the videos in the Midwest from Kansas City, around Kansas City last week, and they see plenty of snow. Ice is just different. But
wait, is that the concept of ice road truckers? What is that? What they do? Drive on ice there? I've never seen.
They drive over in Canada, and they're literally driving over big lakes that are frozen over to deliver product to kind of the edge of the North Pole, essentially, to where maybe they're drilling or doing some type of mining. So
they're going just like direct route because they can now over the water.
Yeah, once it freezes, and it makes you, when I like that show at one point in time, you'd hear the ice crack, and I'm sure it was for effect, but I mean, I can't imagine driving over a huge lake with 80,000 pounds and trying to pretend like it's going to work out good every time.
That sounds terrible. It sounds like nothing I would ever want to do. So SNOWPOCALYSE 2.0 is potentially upon us. Again, took a little trip to the food line today. Still no eggs. A little bit of bread left on the shelves. There was some milk, but that was with the food line. My wife said Harris Teeter did have a full supply of eggs, so we got those in transit to the house.
I appreciate your loyalty to one store. I have none to really nobody. I have some loyalty to friends, stores, no loyalty, brands really moderately dependent on. But I appreciate your loyalty to your local, right down the street food line.
Well, there is also a Lowe's grocery, which I pass on the way to Food Lion, and a Aldi, which is across the street. Aldi confuses me. I don't go there very often. I'm not sure what the concept is in there. I just probably need to get in there a little more often. It's just different. I don't get it, and I don't know if I want to. Yeah, I'm happy.
I think it's European based. You have to
German
bring your own bags. You bring your own bags, whatever. I do think there's some, if you're not extremely brand loyal, only thing I'm really brand loyal on, Paulie, is Jif peanut butter. Everything else is, I'm Jif. Everything else don't quite have it figured out yet, but Aldi does a really good job with everything but
Jif peanut butter. So it's all generics. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my style. So maybe it is the store for me.
It feels like you would like it.
The bringing my own bags isn't great, though. I don't know about that. I'll bring my Food Line bags into Aldi. So anyway. So big game last night, a lot of fun, especially if you don't have a dog in the fight. Just a fun game to watch. Notre Dame versus Penn State. Notre Dame pulled out with a last-second field goal by, an appropriate last name, a clutch last name, Jeter, right? So congratulations to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for moving on to the national title game. Brian, any thoughts on the game? What was your takeaways?
It came down to a handful of plays. They're evenly matched. I saw Portnoy early on talking about, hey, Notre Dame couldn't handle the Big Ten. strength and obviously referring to the lines and Penn State left some points on the board early in the game where they could have definitely put a bigger gap, a pass here, a catch here, and so Notre Dame has a lot of fight, a lot of character. Both of those teams are really good teams. I thought the thing that I thought was ridiculous coming out this morning, I was listening, it's like, does Franklin deserve, he's won in something against top 5 teams. Is his job on the line? It's like, dude, he's made to the semifinals of the playoffs. He should be fine.
He's in the final 4 teams in the country. And the thing that I think is really noticeable for me, though, and I've mentioned this before, I think 12 is too many teams. I don't think there's 12 teams that are legitimately national title worthy. And I think we've seen those early round games weren't really close. And it just hasn't. I think 4 is a good number. In some years, maybe 6, right? But if you look at who Penn State played, they played SMU, who was okay. We've seen what the ACC is. They played Boise State, who not a bad team, but they're not a Big Ten or SEC type team, right? So I think in my estimation, maybe 12 is too many. But now that there's an appetite for it, I think people really love it. They love that first round home game, and
I would only push back because Notre Dame is not in the national championship contention if there's only 4 teams.
I'm saying 6. I think 6 is probably the right number, honestly.
And probably maybe so. And maybe they get ranked differently if because they're technically the 7th seed, right? And I know that's
because of the way they set it up, Boise State had to be a higher seed. And it's not. I think if the committee was just ranking them 1 through 12, it's a different order. Boise State
I like the 12 just from the standpoint it allows for being rewarded in a conference that may or may not be, but it's generally considered inferior when you talk about where Boise State come from. You talk about where the ACC is. So I like being rewarded for winning your league. Yeah. I like the idea of more games. I think as the NIL money spreads out a little bit and people figure out how to do it better, you obviously got North Carolina with Belichick and a bunch of money coming in. Clemson's going to continue to do a good job. There's a bunch of other schools. SMU, I don't know if you've been down there. Only thing I know, they got money. That's 100% sure around that university. And so I really got in
trouble back in the 80s. They had money.
Yeah, and they just got caught, really, because let's not pretend like there wasn't a bunch of other teams doing it. And so I like the idea of 12. It gives real hope to, let's be honest, to teams like NC State. Again, you're not
Boise State,
Yeah, and Boise State, you're exactly right. And so I like 12. I understand why the argument against, but now, like you said, the cat's out of the bag. I don't think it's changing.
Yeah. Rarely, if ever, I can't think of a scenario when a playoff scenario has retracted and gotten smaller. It's only going to get bigger, right? The NCAA tournament used to be 16 teams, then it grew to 32, then 64. Now it's 68, and it's like it only wants. It creates more revenue. It gives teams more chances. I get it.
One thing that is not fair, just back to it. Do you see, I think Notre Dame winning that game and going to the championship, they get $14 million. That in normal cases, if you have a conference, it's spread out throughout your entire conference. But since Notre Dame does not have a conference, they get all $14 million for going to this national championship game. I mean, that's big money.
Is that not fair, or is that strategic and smart?
Well, I don't know. It's not fair, number one, and it can be strategic and smart. I think it can be both.
Yeah. So similar situation, to share the money when Washington State and Oregon State were left in the Pac-12 and everybody else bolted. There was still some money share, some revenue share to happen, and all the other schools were trying to get a piece of the pie. And Washington State and Oregon State were like, whoa. This is our money. We're the Pac-12 now. Pac-2, whatever you want to call it.
I can't argue with them. Hey, if the last one standing is holding the bag, you've done a good job, because the reality is both of those schools have appeal to somebody, right? And and if you can end up, because here's the deal: if you win, going independent may not be a bad idea. If you could put together, because I really think you put together a good enough schedule to put you in the top 12. Now, granted, you don't have a championship game. Granted, you better pay teams that matter. but you can put I mean, Notre Dame is the exception with the brand and the brand for 100 years, and so. But
Yeah.
could one of those two teams do it? I don't know. I mean, I think I would consider it because if you do well, I mean, there's all that money's yours, right? If you
Yeah, absolutely.
win a couple
So,
rounds.
so staying with the Pac-12. So in 2026, it's going to be Washington State, Oregon State, Utah State, Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State from the Mountain West. So when you think about these power conferences, does that conference deserve a free entry into the college football playoff? Like,
No, I would generally say no. But you probably argue that conference is what the ACC is, right? I mean, it's not much different.
I feel like the ACC is better than that. I mean, Florida State really down. I don't know. I'd put the ACC. I mean, the ACC hasn't shown out, but I'd put them up against that for sure. So
probably not, Paulie, to your original thought. It probably doesn't. I don't know. We're still. What's happened is your best conferences, the SEC, is picked off the 2, 3, 4 best from the Big Ten and the Big 12, essentially. And that's what we've tried to do as an ACC. Speaking as we, not really we, but they've tried to just kind of stay afloat, right? Because I think a lot of this money is tied to geography, and if you can say you're picking up another town, I think within the contract clause there is additional monies that automatically come in. So all of a sudden, the ACC has Dallas market, the ACC has Cal Berkeley market, and so those things I think are reason. Even though it's not the ACC, they need to change the acronym. That's essentially the reason they went that way.
Well, they could change it from Atlantic Coast Conference to American Coast Conference, right? All Coast Conference, whatever you want to call it. But
I like all coast.
Even to that point, I saw a commercial for the Big Ten, like one of those commercials you see on, as the Big Ten is playing or SEC or whoever it is, and it was a really some really cool graphics, a really cool commercial. But it started in LA and it kind of went across the country because they have USC and UCLA, and then the traditional powers in the Midwest, and then they're in Rutgers as well, right? So they've got teams in New York City. Yeah. So they've got teams from literally coast to coast, and it's just kind of covering that northern span. But it was a pretty cool commercial. I was sitting there thinking, man, this is just graphically and visually really neat. But
hey, I got something just to kind of piggyback a thought. So obviously, right now we would consider the SEC your Alabamas, your LSU's, your Georgia's that have kind of the money of college football.
Yeah.
In 10 years, is that still the case? Or do you feel like some of these other traditional big institutions, it changes, right? I mean, I think at one time I would have counted kind of Notre Dame as this outside looking in tier for forever. And clearly that's not the case anymore. But a lot of these other programs that the Northeast part of America doesn't really have a strong presence outside of Penn State within the confines. Do you think is there anything that will change the SEC from its dominance?
No, so I think the Northeast never really been known for football, right? The Northeast in particular on the coast, right? It's a very pro sports area. You start getting into the Midwest and you get into more college. That's where you find your Ohio States and Penn States. And then you move into college basketball, it's Indiana and things like that, right? But I don't see them investing the same type of money that the SEC will. It may change, but I don't think holistically it'll ever mean as much. I think that's the SEC's tagline. It just means more, right? And unless there is a individual coach who is a real culture changer, gets into one of those programs. And again, I think it's going to be very specific to a school. I don't think it's going to be like the A-10 or anything will ever, dominate that. The Big Ten will continue to be great and have their, but it's a top-heavy-ish conference, right? You have your Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State.
Indiana's on its way, but yeah.
Well, Indiana, I mean, does that coach stick around there for much longer, or does he jump to a bigger program? Then you've got your Purdue's will pop up every once in a while. Minnesota's will have a good year once a decade. Northwestern once a decade. So again, that's when you get that run of maybe a good group of seniors or now a good group of transfers so you can get some money in there. But it'll take I think a special coach to be there to really make a difference.
Oh, that's a good answer. I agree for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. So big game tonight. The Buckeyes are 6-point favorites over the Longhorns of Texas. They'll be playing this one at the Cotton Bowl, so down in Dallas at the AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play.
Is it Arlington technically? Isn't it technically in Arlington? But it is. They were doing the weather people. Obviously, the storm came through there. It's obviously indoors, not going to have any impact. But they were doing a little bit of a broadcast from outside there, and there's plenty of Ohio State fans. Obviously, plenty of Texas fans. It's going to be a home game for Texas, but it's going to be really interesting to see if Ohio State can still have its dominance, and especially Smith, the receiver. Will Howard, the quarterback, he looks like he may be the best quarterback left in this deal out of these three teams, even though Quinn gets all the love or had gotten all the love. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Paulie, Quinn, wasn't he originally at Ohio State?
Yeah, so Quinn was at Ohio State, so maybe a kind of a payback type game for him. Maybe
there's something there, and he feels.
Yeah.
Anytime you play your friends or guys that you've had a relationship with, and again, it's not hate or anything. You definitely feel, and again, it's probably it's not going to have any impact. There's no more adrenaline you can create, but I'm sure it does make it a little bit more special, especially if you can figure out a way to come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, hopefully with I guess neither of us really have a dog in the fight, but just hoping for a good ball game. It seems to match up a couple of, again, blue blood programs, Texas and Ohio State, and a lot of good weapons. Both teams pretty deep, both teams pretty healthy. So looking forward to an exciting game tonight.
You have a prediction, Paulie, or you have somebody you're pulling for?
No, honestly, no. I'm pulling for a close game. It'll probably be one of those things as the game happens. I'll probably start pulling for one team over another, but don't really care either way. Prediction: I think Ohio State's going to win. I think Texas will cover the spread. 6-point line. I think it'll be closer to a 3-4 point game, but don't really have a favorite or care who comes out on top.
I feel like both of these teams, outside looking in, are easy to pull against. Right? I mean, Texas has that kind of UNC feel, a little smug, easy to pull against. Ohio State, obviously in North Carolina, there's so many people from Ohio that worship Ohio State because it's the only real university in Ohio. Sorry, Cincinnati. Sorry, Kent State. Sorry, Toledo.
And don't forget Ohio, the Bobcats of Ohio.
The Bobcats of Ohio. I hear there's a good time there, but they're not competing. So imagine North Carolina with one university. If it was
one
just
major
the University of North Carolina, it would be insane. And so I do think there's just so much. Both of these teams are really easy for me to pull against.
So you want both teams to lose?
Not possible. I fully realize, because I've hoped that a bunch of times, and I'm not usually a hater. In this case, I may be, and I may find myself, Quinn. Obviously, both of these teams have a lot of likable. It's more the fan bases, but both of these teams have a lot of players on their team. But yeah, I'm. If they both lose, and honestly, I think Notre Dame has traditionally kind of been that way too, right? They were easy to pull against. I feel like the coach who's went there has kind of changed that dynamic. I feel like they have become more likable as he is, the longer his tenure's been there.
Yeah, seeing Marcus Freeman too do an interview.
Hard not to like him.
Very humble, very likable. Said all the right things. Was all about team. They asked him like how this team did it, why this team last night, and he said, "Hey, we found out who we were when times were tough."
Yeah.
So like he seems like that kind of coach. He's like, man, that's who I want to play for. Like,
oh man, 100%. I heard it too, Paulie, and I agree. Marcus, very likable. I'm pulling Notre Dame overall. Sark, obviously a really good coach. Day, obviously a really good coach at Ohio State. Both of those guys, outside looking in, are easy to pull against.
Oh, very good. Well, we're gonna stay warm here in Snowpocalypse 2.0. I've got all my meats and beans ready for a pot of chili tomorrow for some NFL stuff. So we'll be watching the games closely tonight. Make sure you like, subscribe on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Apple Pod, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And make sure you go out and share this with others. We appreciate it. Have a great sports weekend.
Out. Go Pack.